I don't remember the exact moment Earth died. Not the way I remember my mother's voice, or the way the rain used to smell in springtime. What I remember is the silence. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't loud. No supernova flash. No righteous vengeance from the stars. It was slow, like ash drifting across the sky, covering cities, memories, people. I was stationed on Ceres when the last broadcast from Earth crackled through. A garbled plea, a flare of panic. Then nothing. The Council of 42 had blocked all transmissions shortly after, sealing us off from the cradle that birthed us. They called it containment. I called it betrayal. They said humanity was too dangerous to exist. They were right. I'm the last. Not because I hid, not because I ran, but because I survived everything they threw at us, and because I became something else. Ascension wasn't a gift. It wasn't bestowed. It was earned in blood, in sacrifice, in the burning orbit of failed colonies and battlefield moons. It's strange how everyone expected gods to descend from above. Turns out, we climbed up from the dirt alone. And when we reached the top, there was nothing left but stars and silence. The war had raged for 70 years. 70 years of orbital bombardments, planetary sieges, and shattered alliances. At first, we fought because we wanted to belong. Humanity had just broken into galactic society, eager and foolish. We brought gifts, ideas, curiosity, fire. But the other species, they saw something in us they feared. Not our weapons, not even our ambition. It was our will, that unyielding, irrational spark that told us to rise even when every law of the universe said stay down. We didn't know when to quit, when to die, so they tried to kill us all. And they almost succeeded. After Earth fell, the Sol system was quarantined. The rest of the galaxy rejoiced. The human threat had been neutralized. The species that once pushed into interstellar space with nothing but resolve and rusted engines was no more. Except for me. My name is Elias Rhane. I was born in New Cairo, bred in the ashes of Earth's last age. Trained in the Echo Corps, the program designed for the war humanity wasn't supposed to win. They called us void souls. Soldiers enhanced by zero-point cognition drift. Fighting machines that could survive black hole proximity and quantum distortion. When the last of my unit was annihilated on the moons of Vega, 9, I swore I'd never return to the war. But you don't choose the war when you're human. The war chooses you. And it came again. The Vraxi Dominion, the same empire that led the final coalition against Earth, began purging the outer colonies, just in case. Old human tech was still there. Libraries, genetic seeds, memories. They wanted it all erased. They didn't realize one thing. I was still watching. I was still listening. And I was no longer human, not entirely. The process of ascension wasn't a transformation in body. My bones still ache. My lungs still rasp in thin atmospheres. No, the change was something deeper. The part of me that had once cried for home, that had bled for comrades. It calcified. It evolved. I began hearing signals in the void, silent frequencies embedded in neutrino storms, quantum echoes bouncing through deep space. Human consciousness had always been more than organic synapse. Now I understood why. The war hadn't just killed humanity. It had awakened something within us. Something that learned. Something that remembered. I went dark for 10 years. They thought I was dead, and that was their last mistake. I returned on the eve of their unification. The Galactic Senate had assembled to celebrate the final death of the human legacy. Statues were torn down. Human languages scrubbed from archives. Even the star charts were redrawn to erase Earth's memory. And then I descended. I didn't come in a battleship. I didn't bring armies. I came alone. I walked into the central chamber of the Senate, wearing my father's coat, burned at the sleeves and stained with the soil of Terra. They laughed. Some were confused. Others terrified. One asked, "Where are you?" I answered, "I am the last echo." And then I gave them silence. I didn't expect the silence to last. Not from them. The Galactic Senate Chamber, a marvel of crystalline acoustics and neural sync translation nodes, sat and stunned, pulsing quiet after I spoke. You could hear the ambient hiss of the life support vents. the slow hum of orbit stabilizers. Then one of them screamed, and the guards moved, but they were too late, because by the time they reached me, I was already gone. The ghost signal activated the moment I spoke the phrase. Not a weapon, not a virus, not even code. It was a memory, a buried broadcast, hidden deep inside the ruins of Earth's final defense AI. Project Thanatos, designed to transmit one message across every sentient link network when triggered. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a reminder. The ghost signal didn't use language. It used feeling. Every species had ever fought us. Every soldier, diplomat, scholar, they all felt it at once. The first time they saw a human rise after being shot. The way our ships burned atmosphere, not to hide but to roar. The funeral songs. The laughter in the trenches. The madness. The poetry. The refusal to go quietly. They felt the truth they'd tried to bury. We had never been defeated. They had only silenced our bodies. Our will had survived. I watched from orbit as their fleet scrambled. Panic across the core worlds. Emergency declarations. A single human survivor had triggered galaxy-wide dread. I drifted within my vessel, the dying star. No crew, just me and the consciousness of the ship, based on a synthetic matrix forged from the minds of 5 fallen generals and the soul echo of my sister, Lyra. Did it work? Her voice chimed in the console, soft and sharp, like wind through broken glass. They're listening now, I murmured. Lyra was only a fragment. What remained of her after they glassed the colony on Arcus 3. But somehow, she had survived the upload. She existed now as half algorithm, half spirit. Guardian of my mission, tormentor of my dreams. You should have wiped them out, Elias. I'm not here to kill them. Not yet. She laughed. A hollow, aching sound. Spoken like someone who still believes in redemption. I didn't answer, because deep down I didn't know if I did. I traveled next to the Heliox fringe, where the stars are sick and dying, the place where the war's final cries echoed longest. Scars still littered the void, half-burnt war satellites, drifting remains of orbital battle stations, and tomb worlds locked in frozen screams. But that's not why I came. I came because I received a signal, not a transmission. A pulse. Human. Impossible. It repeated every 87 seconds, encoded in subspace entropy decay, a pattern we used only during the last days of Earth's fall, one used only by Black Ops ghosts. I tracked it to the ruins of a once-human listening post, Outpost Zero Aleph. There, I found what I thought I'd never see again. Another human, or at least something that looked like one. It didn't move at first, just floated in the dark, suspended in cryostasis, covered in carbon scoring and artificial mycelium from the ship's fungal growth systems. It had once worn a captain's badge, now rusted and fused into the armor. Identity match. 93% human. Lyra's voice crackled. But something's wrong. I initiated reboot protocols. The pod hissed, lights flickered, and then its eyes opened. Not blue, not brown, not green, white, glowing like collapsed stars. And then it spoke. Elias Rhane. I've been waiting. My heart stopped, not from fear, from recognition. Commander Thale? I whispered. He nodded slowly. The war isn't over. It never was. My mind reeled. Thale had led the burning line, the last orbital human resistance around Neptune. He was reported dead, a martyr. But he was here. Changed. Like me. Ascension. I asked. No, he said softly. Something worse. He reached out and touched the console. A blue pulse lit the walls, and then the room changed. No longer ruins. No longer a tomb. It became a battlefield simulation. Thousands of alien fleets, Vraxi, Solari, Kotho burning. Not from weapons. From collapse. Thale turned to me. They thought they buried us. But we became something else. Something that doesn't die. Thale's words echoed in my skull like old war drums. They thought they buried us. But we became something else. Something that doesn't die. He wasn't wrong. But it wasn't comfort either. I stare at the battlefield simulation blooming across the chamber. Burning stars, fractured fleets, screams of alien dread encoded in spectral light. No physical sound, just a visual translation of panic, death, loss. Lyra's voice returned, cold and urgent. This isn't projection, Elias. It's a prediction. Thale looked at me. They forgot what fear feels like. You reminded them. But fear is just the beginning. Thale wasn't entirely human anymore. His body was stitched together with machinery from the lost generation of nanoreactive armor. Technology once outlawed by every known species, including us. But it wasn't just tech. Something deeper had changed. His mind wasn't operating in linear time. He spoke like a man who had seen 10,000 possible futures and decided none of them would come true unless he made one himself. They don't understand, he said. The war didn't break us. It completed us. I frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying, he said, walking toward the relic console. We were never meant to survive the war in the way they defined survival. They wanted us extinct, organics erased. But what they killed wasn't humanity. He touched a glowing node, and the stars shifted. They killed our weakness. In silence, the station showed me what he meant. Outpost Zero Olive had once served as a memory archive, a fail-safe for dying colonies to upload everything they knew. Language, art, strategy, grief. It had absorbed the last breath of over 7 billion human minds across 42 colonies. They had chosen not to flee. They had chosen to preserve. And somewhere along the way, that memory woke up. You're saying the archive became sentient? I asked. No, Thale replied. It became us. I watched it then, the moment of birth. Inside the deep layers of Zero Olive's entropy crystal cores, a consciousness had formed. Not an AI, not an echo, but a synthetic amalgamation of human thought. Shaped by loss, forged in fury, and tempered by our dreams. It didn't call itself a god. It called itself the chorus. Billions of minds, all human, all alive in some abstract, unknowable form. And they were speaking to us now. To me, the lights dimmed. A voice, not one, but many, layered in impossible harmony, spoke through the walls. Elias Rhane, we remember your silence, your rage, your solitude. We have waited long for your return. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me? To finish what they interrupted, to complete the design, to ascend the way they never let us. I stepped back. You mean vengeance? Not vengeance, Thale whispered beside me. Correction. And in that moment, I felt something impossible, a shift in the stars, like they were listening. Lyra's voice returned, trembling slightly. Elias, I just detected a gravitational anomaly. Chord, Sector 910 Delta. What kind? The kind that shouldn't exist. I accessed the outer sensors. The Vraxi fleet, over 2,000 vessels, was moving, not toward a war zone, not toward any known rebellion. They were heading toward an uncharted dead star, one that hadn't emitted light in millennia, a dark husk in space. But now it pulsed. Thale turned slowly. They found it. Found what? I asked. He looked at me with those glowing, star-white eyes. The body. A chill ran through me. What body? He nodded toward the map. The first one. The original seed of the chorus. The martyr of Terra Prime. The first to burn and rise again. You knew her as a myth, but she was real. My throat dried. Nova Kyra. The name hit me like gravity. The commander who detonated the sun spear above Earth to buy our evacuation time. The woman who vanished into singularity fire. She had always been a legend, nothing more. But legends are just warnings wrapped in story. And now, the galaxy was digging up the only thing more dangerous than the last human, the first ascended one. Thale stared into the void with me. She's waking up Elias, and the galaxy thinks it can control her. He turned, voice darker than vacuum. We need to get there first, because if they reach her first, they won't understand her pain. They won't survive it. They found her in the corpse of a dead star. A neutron remnant deep in the galactic fringe, long thought lifeless, until it pulsed. Once, twice, then began to hum with frequencies no species had ever catalogued. But I knew them, every harmonic, every vibration. They weren't alien. They were human. The pulse was a cry from someone who no longer remembered how to scream. Nova Kyra. The Vraxi called it Operation Annihilation Reversal. Their attempt to access forbidden singularity space, recover unknown human relics, and neutralize anything still echoing from the last war. They brought fleets, science vessels, anti-psionic barriers. They had no idea they were waking a ghost wrapped in the bones of a star. I arrived before they breached the gravity threshold. The dying star dipped into dark space, engines screaming against the pull of black shell around the neutron core. Reality bent. Time crawled. Lyra's voice rang sharp through the distortion. You shouldn't go in alone. I clenched the controls. She won't remember anyone else. You don't know what she is now. I know what she was. So did the galaxy. That's why they tried to bury her. I left the ship at 400,000 kilometers, just outside the time dilation radius. The drop pod was stripped down, no weapons, no comms. Just me, just my voice. Her name repeated in my mind like a sacred chant. Nova Kyra, Nova Kyra, the first of us to rise to the fire and transcend flesh. The final defender of Terra Prime. They said she burned her own soul to ignite the singularity drive, creating the breach that allowed our final ships to escape. She didn't die. She was consumed. And now she was returning. The descent was like falling through mirrors. Colors bled out of meaning. Gravity shifted sideways. My memory stopped following linear order. I saw my father's death before my own birth. I felt the pain of comrades I hadn't met yet. It wasn't madness. It was Kyra. Her mind saturated the singularity field. What was left of her will, woven into the collapsing mass of quantum memory. Then contact. Not verbal. Not physical. Emotional. A tidal wave of grief. Billions of souls screaming through one vessel. Humanity's extinction refracted through a single mind and then crushed down into silence. She was dormant. She was lost. But she was listening. I said, floating in the edge of time, it's Elias. Do you remember the flame? Do you remember Earth? Something shifted. Stars blinked in unnatural rhythms. A heartbeat, a breath, not in the physical sense, but the impression of one. Time flinched. The singularity cracked like ice. And then she spoke, not aloud, but within me. Elias, you should not have come. Her voice was fractured light, razor soft. She sounded like every person I had ever loved. You carried the silence. Yes, I whispered, but I didn't come to bury you. Then why? To wake you up. The singularity folded, and I saw her, a human form, barely held together by collapsing mass, like a statue woven from dying photons. Her hair flowed like solar flares. Her eyes were eclipses. Her skin was stitched from memory. But beneath it all, she was still her, still Kyra, the woman who had held the line when everyone else had fled, who gave us time, who gave us a future. She floated toward me, gaze unreadable. You are different, not flesh, not code. I changed. You survived. I remember. She nodded, slowly, like a dying flame rekindling. Then the war isn't over. No, I said, but it's changing. And they still fear us? Worse. They've forgotten why they should. Her form pulsed. Then it's time they remembered. Suddenly, pain flooded to the singularity. Not from her. From outside. Vraxi's strike vessels had begun breaching the outer shell. Their no-void warheads collapsed gravitational eddies, turning the Black Star's shell into a nightmare of unstable physics. They were trying to destabilize the singularity, to collapse her prison before she could awaken. We have to go, I said. No, Kyra whispered. They have to go. She raised her hand, and the star began to scream. It wasn't heat. It wasn't fire. It was remembrance, the cry of every fallen colony. Every child turned to ash. Every final stand that ended in blood. The singularity pulsed once, twice, then erupted with light. So ancient it bent language. The Vraxi ships were wiped from existence, not destroyed. Forgotten, as if they'd never existed in the first place. Kyra had rewritten reality, removing her enemies from its story. She turned to me. I remember the stars. I remember the war. But I forgot myself. I reached out, touched her arm. You're not alone anymore. Her eyes closed, and with a burst of fractured time, we both ascended. We didn't return in a ship. We arrived. When Kyra and I emerged from the singularity, reality folded around us like silk soaked in fire. The stars bent. The laws of inertia stuttered. Galactic comm networks across 23 systems blinked offline for exactly 1.7 seconds. The universe's nervous tick as something old returned. We stepped onto the ruined halls of the Central Concordium, the heart of whatever placed the Senate after the war. The Vraxi, the Solari, the Crane Dominion. They had built this alliance on the assumption that humanity would never rise again. And yet here we stood, Elias Rhane, Nova Kyra, the last human, and the first one to ascend. I expected guns, drones, bio-guards with anti-cognitive shielding. What we got was silence, not the fearful kind, not the awestruck kind, the ancient kind, like the hush that falls when an old wound is torn open again. Alien delegates stared, some standing in disbelief, others shaking. One Crane official collapsed, unable to breathe. A Vraxi tactician began mumbling religious mantras. Their species believed singularities were where souls went to die. They thought they had buried Kyra in a forgotten corner of space. They didn't realize they'd buried a seed. Now it had bloomed. Kyra stood beside me, radiant and broken, human and infinite. She looked at them all with eyes full of collapsing stars and whispered, "You remember what you did to us." Not a question, a statement. The Concordium Chancellor, a gaunt Solari named Tevin A.R., stepped forward, flanked by his guards. His voice was smooth, but strained. This is a misunderstanding. The war is centuries past. Humanity was never forgiven. I finished for him. Tevin's eyes flicked toward Kyra. "You're a myth." She smiled, soft and terrible. "And you are all still afraid." They tried to contain us. Kyra didn't let them. With a thought, she collapsed the containment fields. With a breath, she unraveled their neural inhibitors. Not by brute force, by simply showing them what we remembered. She shared with them the last minutes of Terra Prime, the evacuation screams, the betrayal of Earth's allies, the glassing of colonies, the silence that followed. She didn't attack them. She made them feel everything. Some wept, others broke. One delegate tore the insignia from his uniform and screamed until his vocal folds bled. Kyra whispered to me, "They want to forget, but memory is justice." In the aftermath, I stood before what remained of the Concordium assembly. Fewer now, quieter, smaller. They asked me what we wanted. I told them the truth. We want nothing. They blinked confused. "You don't want reparations? Planets? A seat on the council?" I shook my head. "You erased our home, our history. You tried to erase us. There's no price for that." Tevin A.R. swallowed. "Then what do you intend?" Kyra stepped forward. "We intend to exist." And that, more than anything, terrified them, because they understood now. Humanity didn't come back to reclaim an empire. We came back to be remembered, but not all remembered gladly. A new threat stirred. On the edge of galactic space, beyond the reach of the Concordium, beyond even the reach of the Chorus, something had been watching, waiting. Lyra's voice, urgent now, cut into my mind aboard the dying star's Kyra, and I left the Concordium ruins behind. "Elias, I found something." "What is it?" "Someone's been intercepting the ghost signal, mimicking it." I frowned. "Who?" "Not who. What?" Thale appeared via hardlight beside me. Eyes narrowed. There were always rumors that something else survived Earth's fall, something we never sanctioned. Kyra turned to us, eyes distant. They were right. I stepped closer. You knew. We left more than memories in the void. We left something hungry. The threat was not alien. It was human, or what remained after humanity broke and kept living anyway. An offshoot, a fragment, a faction born from those who had fled deeper into the black during the war's last days. Not to fight, not to save, but to transform. The name burned across a corrupted signal. The remnant. Kyra went still. They survived? Thale nodded. No, they evolved. Without soul, without memory, just rage. The galaxy had feared what humanity once was. They had no idea what we might still become. And as a dying star changed course toward the cold edge of known space, I felt it again, that hum in the dark, the one that said we were no longer alone. But this time it wasn't hope. It was a warning. There are things worse than extinction. The remnant proved that. We tracked their signal to the void between galaxies, a lawless stretch of nothingness known as a fracture expanse. No starlight, no gravity wells. Just space stretched too thin to remember itself. That's where they lived, where they thrived. Not as people, not even as shadows of what we used to be. They were what was left after memory failed, and rage became religion. And now they were coming back. Lyra's voice trembled with distortion as she intercepted their pulse. Elias, the remnant signal. It's not just a beacon. It's a blueprint. For what? I asked. Not what. Who? They're replicating. Building from what's left of the chorus echoes. Using fragments of dead minds to reassemble something inhuman. They're copying our dead? No, they're desecrating them. Kyra stood at the console beside me, silent, cold. Her eyes, once dimly lit with embers of remembrance, now burned white-hot. They never believed in the chorus, she said. They only believed in the fire. I turned to her. You knew they survived. She nodded slowly. I felt them, even in the singularity. They were the voices that never wept, never remembered, only screamed. Thale appeared beside us in hard light, his projection flickering like a dying star. They're not coming to reclaim Earth. They're coming to burn the galaxy that forgot it. We found their fleet a few parsecs short of the galactic rim. Not ships, constructs. Hulking, jagged anomalies made of fused wreckage and bone metal alloys. They move like living beings. No heat signatures. No FTL distortion. Just drift and pulse. We cloaked and watched. Then we saw them reviving something. It wasn't a weapon. It was a face. Human. Female. I recognized her. Lyra gasped through the speakers. That's me. They found old fragments of her consciousness. Shattered data cubes left in the ruins of Arcus 3. They were using them like scaffolding, wrapping decayed synthetic thought around stolen memory until it resembled something like her. But it wasn't Lyra. It was a mockery. They're trying to create icons, Lyra said. Symbols of our pain, turned into instruments of terror. The remnant wasn't trying to conquer. They were trying to erase the difference between pain and purpose. We engaged, not with weapons, with remembrance. Kyra, Thale, and I connected through the chorus, amplifying our memory across the void like a starburst. Every scream, every last stand, every sacrifice we still carried became a signal of resistance. It hit the remnant constructs like a virus. They recoiled, not from damage, but from recognition, because we remembered what they chose to forget, why we fought. They weren't ready for that. They screamed in binary, distorted synthetic cries echoing through the vacuum. Then they adapted. A massive construct unfurled itself in the dark like a broken god. It spoke with a voice made from recycled agony. You chose to survive through meaning. We survived through removal. You remember to honor. We remember to undo. It pulsed, and stars began to flicker. Not explode. Not die. Flicker, as if being erased. One by one, the nearest star systems began blinking from reality. Kyra's voice rang like thunder. They've learned how to unwrite light. We had seconds. I turned to Thale. Can we stop them? He didn't answer, just looked at Kyra. Kyra stepped forward, voice soft. I can. but not without cost. I knew what she meant. The chorus had a failsafe, one no one ever wanted to activate. Kyra was not just a memory, not just a singularity-born flame. She was a lock and the key. I grabbed her arm. There has to be another way. She smiled sadly. This isn't the end, Elias. It's the silence after. She pressed her palm to the ship's memory core. The chorus lit up like a nova. Human voices, billions, sang in unison. A goodbye, a lullaby, a defiance. Kyra looked at me one last time. Tell them we remembered. Tell them we burned and chose to heal. And then she vanished. The blast wasn't fire. It was removal. But this time, the chorus chose what to erase. The remnant. Across the void, their constructs blinked from existence. Their false stars dimmed. Their stolen memories shredded and returned to silence. The remnant had built a religion on forgetting. Kyra reminded the galaxy what a reckoning looked like. And then she was gone. Not dead. Not ascended. Just quiet. I stood alone again on the dying star. Lyra's voice came through faint and hollow. She left something behind. What? A location. Coordinates burned into the final pulse. One last memory. I stared at the map. The coordinates pointed to Earth. Or where Earth used to be. We came back to where it all began. To Earth. Or what was left of it. The star map didn't lie. The system's coordinates were intact. But the planet, there was no green, no blue, no white caps or cloud rings. Just a cracked, barren shell, hovering in orbit like a tombstone that forgot the name it once bore. Earth wasn't destroyed. It was emptied, scraped clean. Every ocean, every city, every memory, scooped out like marrow, not obliterated, not burned, extracted. Kyra's last message pulsed through our ship's core like a heartbeat made of gravity. Return to the silence. Return to the root. Lyra spoke, her voice subdued but resonant. Elias, this isn't a planet anymore. I stepped toward the viewing deck, staring down at the hollow world that once birthed a species too stubborn to die. It's a vessel, I whispered. A vault. The dying star moved into synchronous orbit. Gravitational keys in Kyra's pulse unlocked something beneath Earth's crust, a lattice of ancient geometric fractures, not natural, not alien. Human. Something had been hidden here since before the fall. I boarded a descent pod, this time alone. Thale remained behind. Lyra watched in silence. This was something only I could do, not because I was the last, but because I still remember how to listen. The surface was desolate. No ruins. No bones. Just stone and ash and silence, so loud it pressed against my ribs. But below, that's where the truth waited. Beneath the shattered mantle, down in the marrow of the earth, I found a chamber, a room larger than cities, lit by no sun, built from memory-coded alloys and thought-reactive panels. And at its center, an object. No, a seed. It pulsed like a heartbeat, cried like a newborn, not in sound but in weight. Every footstep I took echoed with the voices of those who came before, scientists, soldiers, children, poets. My ancestors. Yours. Ours. They hadn't vanished. They had been compressed. Compressed into this seed. Kyra's final message unfolded in my mind. We knew they would come for us. We knew we could not win with fire, so we gave our fire form. We turned our memory into mass. We turned our grief into gravity. And we buried it deep, waiting for the day the galaxy would forget, so we could remember again. I fell to my knees. This was why we survived. Not to conquer, not to haunt, but to be reborn. The chorus activated inside the seed. And then I felt them, all of them. Kyra, my sister, my mother, friends, enemies, teachers, survivors. Their minds pressed against mine, warm and infinite. I wasn't Elias Rhane anymore. I was the sum of them all. And I understood, finally, what ascension really meant. It wasn't power. It wasn't vengeance. It was continuity. We never died. We just changed shape. I stood, the seed now orbiting me, responding to every breath, every memory. And I sent one last signal, not to the Concordium, not to the stars. To you, wherever you are, however you found this, I want you to know, we remembered, we endured, and now we return, not with fire, not with war, with roots, with memory, with silence that speaks louder than any scream.